The jury finding Travis McMichael guilty on all charges. His father, Gregory McMichael, guilty on all but one charge, malice murder. And William Roddy Bryan Jr. guilty on all but three charges. And this was the scene outside that courthouse in Brunswick, Georgia. Cheers erupting as that verdict was read. Just an incredible scene they're playing out there after this trial going for 2 weeks. Again, this is all stemming from the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, which happened back there on February 23rd of 2020. For more, let's bring in ABC's Alex Presha outside that courthouse in Georgia, as well as Shauna Lloyd, ABC News contributor and managing partner of the Cochran firm. Thank you both for joining me. Alex, just incredible job out there since day one covering this very tough trial. The jury there had a big job ahead. There was a lot that was also made up of the makeup of this jury, nearly all white, only one black person on that jury, but at the end they found those men guilty.
That's right, Kenneth. And, you know, I appreciate your kind words. We just heard from the Reverend Al Sharpton out front here. And in speaking to the audience, he had this saying, well, number one, never seen a Thanksgiving like this, but also, after this verdict, a lot has been made about the composition of this jury, him saying that this isn't a sign that all whites are racist. It's not a sign that all blacks are worthless. This jury, all that's been made about the makeup, just the one lone black juror coming to the same conclusion that they say should have been the verdict in this case from the get-go. That malice murder charge against Travis McMichael, felony murder against all three of those defendants, Gregory and William Roddy Bryan, among other charges that they were also found guilty of. And Kenneth, I will say, like, I mean, since we've been out here, it's been relatively calm. But I will say, when we got word of that jury verdict being reached after lunch, the excitement, people crowding the courthouse steps behind me, and you saw it whenever the judge read out that first guilty verdict against Travis McMichael for the first count of malice murder. Ahmaud Arbery's father, Marcus Arbery, inside the courtroom, letting out that cheer. Outside, it was just as loud, if not louder. We could hear it from our position here. And then as charge after charge was read with that guilty, 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 just continued chants and continued cheers. This is something that the family has talked about. It's been a long time coming. You think about this shooting happened almost 2 years ago, February 23rd of 2020. It's been a long road for them. For them today, it's finally the culmination. Wanda Cooper Jones, who was Ahmaud Arbery's mother, saying, y'all knew him as Ahmaud, I knew him as Quez, but today he can rest in peace. Kenneth?
Powerful words there from Ahmaud Arbery's mother. Alex, stay right there. I want to get to Shauna Lloyd. Shauna, I'm curious about your reaction to these verdicts, and break it down for us when it comes to the fact that Travis McMichael guilty on all counts, but you had some not guilty verdicts when it came to Gregory McMichael and Roddy Bryan.
Absolutely, Kenneth. And let's start with the charges that were different. So the malice murder Travis McMichaels was found guilty of has an intent requirement. He was the one with the shotgun. He is the one that got out of the vehicle. So the jury found that he had that requisite intent to do this shooting with a malice in his heart. So that's what they found him guilty of, as well as all of the underlying felony murders. When it comes to Greg McMichaels, he was not the one with the shotguns. Therefore, they did not find him guilty of the malice murder, but they did find him guilty of all the other felony murders. When it comes to Roddy Bryan, what they found him not guilty of was not guilty of malice murder, not guilty of the felony murder that was attached to the shotguns, because as we know, he didn't have a shotgun. Now, Roddy Bryan and the McMichaels were all found guilty of false imprisonment and aggravated assault with vehicles, which then triggered those attached felony murders of the vehicles and felony murder as well with the false imprisonment.
And we are waiting to hear more from the defense attorneys, but we've gotten some word that they do plan to appeal these guilty verdicts, this conviction here. Laura Hogue, the attorney for the father, Gregory McMichael, said she was very disappointed. That she said, quote, I'm floored with a capital F. This appeal should not be surprising, Shauna Lloyd, when it comes to this defense team, especially when you saw the defense attorney for Roddy Bryan, who was raising concern about black pastors. Apparently, he had passed a note to the judge when it came to the lone black juror as well, maybe something preparing for that appeal?
Absolutely. The defense has been clearly eyeing an appeal and setting an appellate record from the very beginning of this trial. That's what all those objections were about. That's what the repeated calls for a mistrial were, and those motions were denied. So they were setting a record because they knew that should this have to go up on appeal, they wanted a very clear record of the things that they felt along the way could have changed the course, and that the judge did not use his discretion properly. So they have been setting this record from the very beginning, and appeals are almost automatic when you see this type of a conviction. So it's not surprising at all that they are immediately going to file appeals.
Alex, you touched on it when talking about Ahmaud Arbery's mother, his family, the reaction outside that courthouse. I know it was emotional for the people who were outside there. We heard the cheers, we saw people crying, hugging. Can you talk about the impact on this community? I know, when it comes to justice for Ahmaud, I heard one commentator actually say justice for Ahmaud would be Ahmaud Arbery actually being alive, but he is gone, and now a jury has decided that it is Travis McMichael who killed Ahmaud Arbery, and he is being held accountable for that. But talk about just the impact on that community.
Well, look, I think for the Arbery family, the loss of Ahmaud's life, it's something that they're never going to get back. You think about we're on the eve of Thanksgiving, right? And this huge national holiday, which is a time for families to come together, and that's going to be an empty chair at their dinner table. But I think for the larger Brunswick community, this was something that we've heard members of this community say, we've got to get this one right. I was having a conversation with two gentlemen who born and raised here, and listen, it's a small town. A lot of people know the defendants in some capacity, or possibly knew the Arbery family in some capacity. One of these gentlemen happened to know Travis McMichael. They were around the same age. There's only two main high schools around here. And he was talking about whenever word of this first got out, whenever they first saw the cell phone video, they'd heard about the case in a couple of the local churches. There was this sense that Brunswick is almost under investigation. Brunswick is almost on trial here because the town became associated with this case, and anytime that they traveled and people found out that they were from Brunswick, this was the first thing they brought up. And so, his sentiment was that, look, we have to have some sort of verdict here that shows that this town, this community here has come together and can grow. And I think, it's the same thing that we've heard from faith leaders throughout this trial. Last night they held a vigil, steps outside of the courthouse, praying, singing songs, and fellowshipping. And the mood there too was that, here is a chance for Brunswick to show the world what it's about. And while, look, regardless of how you feel about this verdict, there is certainly a sentiment within this community that this is a message that they want to put forth to anyone who might be looking in. All the media attention that they've gotten because of this disturbing video, because of this trial, which has been so tough and so hard for not just the families inside that courtroom, but also for the surrounding community. They wanted a message coming out of this trial that, look, we can build from here. And this, for a lot of them, is the verdict that they were hoping to build on.
And Shauna, as Alex was mentioning, the community saying we've got to get this right, not only for the reasons Alex just pointedly mentioned there, but also because of the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict and the fact that it was not guilty for Kyle Rittenhouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Different cases, but what was similar was the self-defense argument here. And so we know with this jury, it only took 11 hours to deliberate before they reached a guilty verdict. I'm curious from you, compared to other cases, is this quick? Because I know sometimes when they say it's quick, it's going to be guilty for the prosecution. And if it takes some time, if it takes days, most likely it's leaning toward the defense and being found not guilty. What's your experience with this?
My experience is typically that whenever you get a quick verdict, something under 2 days, I think that what it really signifies is that the jury has come into this with some mutual conscious acceptance of either guilt or innocence. I think when you see a jury come into a room and can establish certain things immediately, well, we all agree that, and in this case, it's likely that citizens' arrest law was not applicable. It gives them a common place to get started from. And I think the difference with Kyle Rittenhouse, as opposed to this case, is that when the jury looked at this, I think what they saw was not necessarily a question of self-defense, because what the jury established was that they were not coming from a legal position. They were illegally chasing a young man simply because he was African-American running in their neighborhood and he didn't speak to them. That's essentially what you see with this verdict having come back that fast, is that they clearly came into the room with that as a base level. And so now it's just which charges apply from there.
And we just got this response in from the Attorney General there in the state of Georgia, Chris Carr, who said the loss of Ahmaud Arbery was a tragedy that should have never occurred. Today's verdict brings us one step closer to justice, healing, and reconciliation for Ahmaud's family, the community, the state, and the nation. Alex, you've been down there in South Georgia for a few weeks now, and we know the history of that state, the racist past. In that area, I mean, race was obviously looming over this trial. There's been back and forth about how much the prosecution actually talked about race in opening and closings throughout the trial. But there was the race element. I think you've even said is that four-letter R word that's been over this case. So I'm curious, from your viewpoint and your reporting and what you've seen there and the people you've spoken with, how does this change Brunswick, Georgia?
Well, I mean, I think you look at Ahmaud Arbery, his name will forever be associated with change now, right? I mean, even before this trial, I mean, you had a citizen's arrest law that had been on the books in this state since the 1860s, which is no longer here, and that's the direct result of Ahmaud Arbery. I think also the way cases get investigated, there is certainly some scrutiny there because of Ahmaud Arbery. And so, I mean, these are some fundamental changes that have already resulted from Ahmaud Arbery's life and ultimate demise, and that was before even today's verdict was read. And so I think that, when we talk about the community, looking for something to kind of build upon, a verdict that they can build upon and reconcile and then heal from, this is part of the change and the healing and the reconciliation that they're looking for. And so we've already seen it even before the verdict today. And you talk to a lot of people around here, they're hoping that things like this will only continue.
And Shauna, last word to you, which is this is not over. There is that federal civil rights case, and so that community still has to go through more trials, obviously at the federal level, and any other potential that may come out of this in the courts. But again, this is not over.
Absolutely. There are federal charges that are being levied against these gentlemen that have been found guilty today. However, this case, I think, is now going to be the staple by which everything else is layered on top of that. There are hate crime allegations and a case that's being brought against them. This also opens them up to civil lawsuits as well for wrongful death. So there's a number of other things that will continue here. Their court troubles are not over with this particular verdict. However, I think that this verdict allows the community to be able to move on.
All right, Shauna Lloyd, thank you so much. And Alex Presha, our ABC News correspondent, again, on the ground there since day one, been right there for us for ABC News Live with our gavel-to-gavel coverage. Alex is a friend of mine, and I will say I'm extremely impressed with your work. I will text you even more flowers later on, Alex. I know it was a very tough trial, and the same to Shauna as well. Shauna, you've been there with us throughout every single day, and we really appreciate it right here on ABC News Live.
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.